Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the World Bank and IMF Week at the Atlantic Council. I'm Adrienne Arsht, Executive Vice Chair of the Atlantic Council and founder of the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center. This year's spring meetings are consequential, taking place amid a trade war between the two largest economies in the world, and weeks after President Trump announced tariffs on imports from all over the world, making a new chapter in the geoeconomic landscape. In this context, finance ministers and central bank governors from around the world are here in Washington, not just to attend the meetings, but to take stock of their economies and navigate an increasingly complex global environment. Amid these dynamics, we turn our focus to Panama, a country whose economic success has been an example for the region and whose strategic positioning has become front and center in recent news cycles. It's also a country that I hold dear to my heart. The song we heard for the introduction, Soy Como Tu, is a song by my dear friend Erica Ender, a Panamanian-American singer-songwriter and advisory council member who wrote for the center that song a couple of years ago. Panama is also one of the countries that I have traveled to the most in Latin America. I founded the Adrienne Arsht Community-Based Resilient Solutions Initiative with the Panama-based Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute in the middle of the Panama Canal. And last November, I was in Panama City with the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center for a major conference to commemorate the Summit of the Americas and celebrate US-Panama ties. Today's conversation, therefore, is nothing but a continuation of the Atlantic Council's work highlighting the strategic importance of US-Panama relationship. And we couldn't be more thrilled than to have Minister Chapman with us today. And to introduce the minister and guide us, I will turn this over to Jason Marzac, the Atlantic Council's Vice President and Senior Director of the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. Minister, Adrienne's presence today shows the importance of Panama, of course to Adrienne, but of course to the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center and to the Atlantic Council writ large. It's absolutely wonderful to have you here today at the Atlantic Council in person. We were speaking beforehand that the first event that Minister Chapman did was with the Atlantic Council was a few weeks before being named minister, when we did a election readout after President Molino's victory, and you joined us in your private sector role at the time. And so this is you've been to our old headquarters. This is your first time at our new headquarters. So it's wonderful to have you. As Adrienne said, Panama is so important to the center, to this organization. I had the opportunity to be in Panama earlier this year, where I had the opportunity to sit down with the administrator of the Panama Canal and to look at the importance of the canal insofar as a connecting of global supply chains, also the importance of the canal for advancing hemispheric economic security, which is ultimately what leaves both of our countries better off. Before introducing the minister, I also have the pleasure to announce during this IMF World Bank Week and this event today in partnership with the Atlantic Council's Geoeconomic Center, in partnership with the World Bank and IFC, the creation at the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center, the launch of our America's Economic Security Working Group. This is a line of work that will build a hemispheric vision of mutually beneficial economic security that makes the United States safer while also helping Central America, Panama, Dominican Republic become more prosperous, more connected, and more resilient. This is actually a group that builds off of existing work at the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center that seeks to advance the right conditions for investment attraction that makes the U.S. and its neighbors more economically secure. This is also work that has strong support across the aisle, both Republican and Democrat, here in Washington, as evidenced by a recent report of a previous iteration of this group that had both Republican and Democrat co-signatories. Given the importance of regional economic security, I'm thrilled, Minister Chapman, to have you here with us today. The minister brings a wealth of experience from both the public and private sectors. He previously served as managing partner at Endesa, which is a leading Panamanian consulting firm. He also holds economic degrees from Brown University and the prestigious Inkai Business School as well. Brown, of course, is prestigious too, and brings deep expertise in fiscal policy, macroeconomic analysis, and strategic planning. So I'll ask a few questions to the minister. We have about 20 minutes for a conversation. Let me start with a question about the spring meetings. You're here in Washington at a time of many finance ministers, central bank governors from around the world have come to Washington just weeks after the president's announcement of the global tariffs, the global reciprocal tariffs. Panama's effective tariff is the baseline rate of 10% and has remained 10% after the 90-day pause. Considering the existing US-Panama trade promotion agreement that eliminates trade barriers as well as promotes economic integration, how do these new tariffs, how is Panama thinking about this new baseline tariff of 10%?
Well, first and foremost, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Adrienne, Jason, thank you for having me. Beautiful place. First time being here, so it's always a pleasure.
You're welcome anytime.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, regarding the tariffs, that's a fascinating topic. It's not on the top of the list of, I would say, challenges that Panama faces. Most of the export of Panama is services, as you may all know, not goods, which include, obviously, the Panama Canal, air transportation, tourism, all the ecosystem around the Panama Canal. So it's like, of our exports, about 90% are services, which are not taxed in terms of tariffs. And when you basically equalized everyone at 10%, it's like a one-time event. And after that, you might have some effects in world trade that probably is going to have, like a short hiccup, and it will eventually come back to normal if there is such a thing as a new normality. So in that sense, it might actually be an opportunity for Panama, since other countries can see Panama as a base to export or re-export and add some value to certain products, and the proximity to the U.S. Geographical position is obviously our very important asset and a competitive edge, and the closeness physically to geographical closeness to the U.S. It's also a great advantage in terms of sea connectivity, air connectivity. So it's actually, we see it as an opportunity.
Air connectivity, I know there's more connection points across the region from Panama than there even is from Miami, speaking about the connectivity of the
Miami
country.
used to be the place, not anymore.
Not anymore. In addition to tariffs, of course, there's been a lot of attention to Panama from the president before assuming office and after, and once assuming office. Focus on the canal, of course, and the importance of the canal for broader security and broader economic security. Secretary Hegseth was just in Panama as well recently with a new deal on security and economic ties. There's also been the port sale with to BlackRock. Where do you see things going? Some of the agreements that have been made recently, maybe it's the BlackRock deal, also maybe potentially the visit from Secretary Hegseth recently. What does this mean insofar as the trajectory of a mutually beneficial U.S.-Panama economic relationship? Where do you see that going?
Actually, I'm more optimistic than I was probably a year ago. Why? Because in the past few months, the interaction between the U.S. and Panama, it really hasn't been seen in, I don't know, a couple of decades at least, at probably the beginning of the century, since I can remember. I had the privilege of participating in both meetings when both Secretary Rubio and Secretary Hegseth went to Panama. Both were excellent meetings, very good exchange, very friendly meetings. We saw eye to eye and in terms of written understanding agreements. One of the issues was actually foreign direct investment. And one of the, myself as obviously my background and actually my short experience as a public employee. Most of my 35 years has been in the private sector. But taking that into consideration, I told him, one of the things I told Secretary Hegseth was the last meeting is it's an opportunity for both to put Panama on the map, which has been an opportunity. There's, as I say, you might see a crisis and other people might see opportunities, or the glass is half full and not half empty. It's an opportunity to put Panama on the map and to attract more foreign direct investments. Still, the U.S. is still the #1 investor. Colombia has been creeping up in the past 2 decades, investing in all sectors: finance, commerce, trade, industry. But still, the U.S. is the largest, and we're eager and very interested in bringing more investment into the country.
Minister, that's exactly the vision of here at the Atlantic Council, right? How do we provide opportunities for investment acceleration that also helps to countries to grow and to prosper economically, which also, of course, has incredible benefits for the U.S. and the U.S.'s economic security. And this goes back to our America's Economic Security group that I announced at the beginning of this program.
Just to mention one case, in terms of regional headquarters, for instance, I believe Procter & Gamble is probably the largest of those using that regime, of that scheme of regional headquarters. And precisely because of what you said, the connectivity. From there, they can pretty much cover the entire continent, which is highly convenient for them. Obviously, quality of life and personal security and many other attributes that's very beneficial in terms of quality of life now.
And those, going back to the BlackRock deal, those deals are they're moving forward at this point, and all systems a go, right?
Well, as I was telling Adrienne before, it's no news, good news.
Yeah.
And I did try to get some fresh news today. I was on the phone with BlackRock this morning, and they confirmed that the process is going along.
That's great.
It's a complex transaction. It's a big transaction.
Yes. Yeah.
We're talking about 40-some countries, 40-some ports around the world, not just the two of Panama. So there's work to be done.
Looking at the next phase, I think of the U.S.-Panama relationship, right? And that this, as you said, there's never been this much attention to Panama in decades.
Yes.
Right. And I also see that as an opportunity, right? When was the last time we saw Panama on the front pages or news alerts from all different organizations, right? I think the American public recognizes now the importance of Panama, right, as an ally for the United States.
Just to give you an idea, both secretaries told me personally, they said they hadn't been to Panama before and they were quite impressed. And they only went to Panama City. So they just saw, a very small part of what Panama has to offer.
Going back to what Panama has to offer, what do you see insofar as kind of the next phase of this relationship with the U.S., with Panama, insofar as creating a common economic security strategy, right? A common agenda that that serves U.S. interests, serves America First foreign policy interests, as well as serves Panama's interests. What is that relationship? What is that economic relationship?
I would put side by side America First and Panama First.
Yeah.
I think we can achieve that together. In terms of security, obviously, Panama is in strategic position. So and we share those preoccupations, and those are one of the issues that we addressed with Secretary Hegseth. And in terms of investments, I would look probably more into future activities, or where is the economy moving forward? Not looking through the the past, but into the future. Probably technology, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, microchips. So it's more, we have to be looking into the future, and for that you need training, education, very technical education to be prepared for what the future brings. No?
So, Mr. I want to talk, as we look to the future, talk about Panama's fiscal outlook, right? Panama has, and you probably more updated numbers than I do, but real GDP growth about 3.5%, roughly, about looking at this year, but as well as a fiscal deficit that's about 7% of GDP. As you look at those numbers and against that backdrop, what are some of the policies that you're looking to implement for a path forward for a resilient Panamanian economy, given all of the uncertainty that we're seeing at the global level at this moment of kind of
Let me begin by mentioning that we inherited a very challenging situation from the fiscal and also on other issues that, just to mention a few, the pension program, which we just completed a reform, the mining issue, just to mention two big challenges. And that came hand in hand with the fiscal situation, where debt was increased tremendously, almost doubled in terms of nominal terms and related to the size of the GDP or the economy, with tremendous fiscal pressures. So in my first conversation with President-elect Molino, that he was very good in convincing me to take on the job, and on the issues that are of my most importance, it was easy because he fully agreed on all of those. Not a single one was out, which includes fiscal discipline. And we both are committed to a legacy of turning around the fiscal situation so that following administrations inherit a completely different situation than we did in terms of debt management, in terms of fiscal balance. And for that, we started reforming the social fiscal responsibility law. We did several things there. It was the first, probably most comprehensive reform since the law was created back in 2008. So we went into actually looking into structural deficit, how to calculate it, and a trend, a very conservative trend to have a progressive reform in terms of fiscal policy making. And we're looking at by the end of the decade to have a deficit under 2% and to have a surplus on the primary fiscal side, to start, first of all, lowering the speed of debt growth and eventually stopping it, and reducing dramatically the relationship of the size of the debt vis-a-vis the size of the economy. We're looking at taking that slowly but firmly in 15 years to get it back to 40%. So we're fully committed with that. So last year, the deficit was higher than many people expected, and that's a lot of explanation. And one of those is, I would say, the main, I would summarize it with just one word: transparency. And I come from a private world where transparency, it's good business. And I do believe it's the same in the private sector, in the public sector. So we put everything on the table, and all obligations past due. And when I mean past due, we're talking about several years, even as far as 2018, 2019. So we cleaned the table, put that up to date. Obviously, it's a one-time deal, hurts, but you got to bite the bullet, no, and move forward. This year, we are very fully committed to have a fiscal result below 4%. Following our plan, after modifying the fiscal law, we went into the pension reform. And we did the most comprehensive pension reform probably in the last I don't know, probably the largest one, the most comprehensive one ever, since it was created in 1941. Happened to be, which was not the end or the main driver, it does have positive fiscal effects as an unintended consequence, happened to be positive.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it would also help. No, right after, as President Molino promised, and we supported him, it's right after the pension reform, we were going to be addressing the mine issue, and actually he announced that the following day, and a couple days later, the First Quantum, I have to recognize this, and they dropped the arbitrations that they have, and the other arbitrations are pretty much following the same path.
Yeah. And that was so important because even though it's one sector, it shows the importance of rule of law kind of for the government writ large across the economy, right?
You said a magic word. Both the president and myself come from that world, and we are true believers and defenders of the rule of law.
Yeah.
And in business, that's a cornerstone.
Can you share with our, we have a large audience watching online, so as you're talking about the growth strategies, what are some of the drivers that business and other investors should be looking at that the government will be implementing to be able to hit those benchmarks that you've been talking about, over the course of the president's term and even beyond the president's term?
Well, the train, the boat, or the airplane, whatever you want to call it, it's just about to take off, so you better be on it. Probably one of our strengths is diversification. Panama doesn't have a single sector where we depend on. And I always get surprised when I have that dialogue with investors or actually analysts or an economist regarding Panama, saying, well, what do you think the Panama Canal represents in terms of the economy? So 25%, 30, 40%, like, no, it's just 6% of the Panamanian economy. It does represent a lot more in terms of fiscal revenues, definitely. It's about 25 cents per dollar. But then you go on to other areas of the economy, and it's highly diversified. You have areas such as tourism, which only represents a little bit less than 2%, when other countries that actually have less to offer within a tourism portfolio, they do 5 times that or more. So the potential there to grow is tremendous. In terms of logistics platform, all that ecosystem around the Panama Canal is completely sub-exploited yet. Actually, the expansion of the Panama Canal was not an end in itself, was means to further develop the economy. One fact that demonstrates that is the question you had about the ports. Mm-hmm. Actually, in that port transaction, when C.K. Hutchinson decided to sell, there were, I believe, at least, I know personally, talking to them, at least 4 of the largest port operators in the world show interest in participating in that transaction, and actually they presented bids. And obviously, we know who won the bid.
Right.
And right after the bid, not right after, but a couple of days or weeks right after the transaction was announced, Maersk, which is the second largest user of the Panama Canal after MSC of Mediterranean Shipping Company, announced the acquisition of the Panama Canal Railroad. So you have these 2 huge events. We're talking about a billionaire investment and hundreds of millions in investment. I think it was about 600 million within a couple of months.
Yeah.
People investing in Panama. So that tells you it's very powerful, the message. In a country where you have an economy just about to be $100 billion in size, and you're talking about something regarding 3 points of GDP in investment in just a couple of months. That's extremely powerful.
Yeah. And not only investment, but I'll also say investment that brings transparency with it.
And high quality.
And high quality.
High quality investors, which what we are aiming for. I mean, in a country like Panama, to bring foreign direct investment is not necessarily difficult. The challenging part is to bring first-rated, first-quality type of investments. Yeah. And we just have 2 of those recently.
Yeah. Well, so investment also brings jobs.
Indeed.
And jobs, the path to prosperity.
Indeed.
Is the theme of this week's World Bank IMF spring meetings. So on the theme of jobs and prosperity, the service-led economy that Panama has is deeply connected to, as we were talking, global trade flows. But at the same time, there's also challenges, of course, on informality, challenges of youth employment, skills mismatch that persists around the world, including in Panama.
Yeah, Panama doesn't escape any of those like the rest of Latin America, yeah.
What do you see as some of the biggest opportunities as we think about the theme of this week's spring meetings for Panama, insofar as creating the future labor force is going to be required to be competitive in the new global economy?
Well, first of all, you have an economy that's in relationship of GDP per person, and if you adjust this for purchasing power parties, the number one in Latin America. We achieved that in just a couple of decades. So it's sometimes we forget, but it's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Obviously, that doesn't translate in the distribution of national income, and that's a challenge, but yet an opportunity. Because you need growth, you need job creation on the formal sector, especially in the private sector, to make that happen. And we're committed to doing that. For that, you need to cut red tape, you need to cut down bureaucracy, you have to simplify, and you have to somehow make it a lot easier to make investments, to create jobs and new opportunities. No? And that comes in hand in hand with foreign direct investment as well. No?
Now, Minister, we have about 2 minutes left here, so I just want to give you an opportunity for any kind of final thoughts or comments that you want to share with those in the room, those watching us online at this, I think, really critical week for the IMF World Bank meetings at a time of such important global economic transition. What's your message about Panama and Panama's role in this economic transformation?
Talking about role, I decided to accept this role because I'm a true believer in the future of Panama. Otherwise, if I did not, I would be doing other things. As I said, my first time as a public employee. I come from the private sector. Thank God I've done quite well, and I'm grateful for that. So being a true believer in the future of Panama, I invite you to take it seriously, look at it from both, if you are in the part of your life where you're looking for investment opportunities, look at Panama. There are plenty of opportunities. If you are looking for leisure, it's a hidden gem. It's a hidden gem, people, and actually all the tourism that you see in Panama, it's organic. We are not out there selling all the beauties of Panama, and when you meet people that go organically to Panama, we just met a couple of it's high-level Italians that were tourists in Panama for 2 weeks. It's how did it go? It's like, well, we need probably a month or more to actually get to know more of this tiny, beautiful country.
It's an absolutely beautiful country. Adrienne and I had the opportunity in November to spend some time outside of the capital as well, and absolutely incredible, right? When you get beyond some of the larger urban areas, all that the country has to
Glad to hear that.
I want to again thank Adrienne for joining us and opening this conversation, who has such great commitment to Panama. And to you, Mr. Chapman. And I think the relationship of the Atlantic Council with you personally, as I mentioned, even before assuming the role of minister, but also with the Panamanian government writ large. We've hosted a number of your colleagues here at the Atlantic Council or in Panama as well. We see this as an incredible opportunity. We haven't seen Panama as prominent in the U.S. and in the international scene as it is right now, and that's an opportunity that can't be wasted.
Totally.
And I know that you and your government are focused on making sure that opportunity.
Remember, I come from a world where I'm totally focused on results. So.
Yeah. Well, please join me in thanking the minister for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Quiero que aunque norte y sur sean distintos, lleven un mismo latido en el ritmo, como quien comparte el mismo todos somos latinos. Quiero que la unión que logra la fuerza rompa divisiones y abra